Yo,
Hi,
hey, what's up? How are you?
I'm good, and I'm trying to set up this camera. Okay, here. Yeah, we're good
You live
now.
in you live in a library.
No, this is my
There's
house.
always there's always gang books behind you.
Yeah, it's my house.
Are they there to read, or do you use them to roll the stuff that you smoke?
Uh, there to read them. I never play with my books. They're very expensive for me to roll with them.
Yeah. All right, good stuff. Okay, so wait,
But how are you though?
oh, someone else wants to join.
Oh, okay. It's been a crazy weekend for me. It's been a crazy weekend.
Yeah, I can
Yeah,
understand. It's been a crazy week for me too,
yeah.
man.
But hey,
Um,
started the week and we're rolling in.
Yeah. All right, so great conversation last time. Like I said,
Yeah,
there were so many talking points and we could go everywhere, anywhere. And
true.
having someone like you on the phone is also it's a nice thing to have because there's no limitation. It's like wherever it goes, we go, and then we speak about that, which is good because it opens up well, for me at least, it opens up my thought process to a lot of stuff, especially from
Mm.
a different point of view. So, yeah. Anyway,
Yeah, it was
yeah.
good because after the conversation, we had conversation with my friends, and I realized
Uh-huh.
most of us have never thought of the time clock issue. And it was something that has never featured in how we look at relationships in both genders. And it was such an interesting point, even for both genders, to like, oh, okay. So it really did spark a conversation even within my circle as to something that we have to converse about for some time and make time and have a conversation how it looks like as we're trying to help each other navigate life. Just also to check in with each other. Has anyone made a mistake in trying to fast track their lives that they forget themselves? And I think it's a very important exercise we want to try out, checking
Mm.
on each other on how far we're thinking around relationships and what they mean for us and how they're influencing our career choices when we want to have kids. Do we want to have kids at all? And yeah, I think it was such a conversation that even within my circle, it was like, oh, yeah,
Mm.
this is something we need to talk
Yeah.
about and we've never really paid attention to.
Yeah, yeah. I can understand why as well, man. It's like, we guys and girls are both the same, almost up until puberty. And then even then it's like you don't really change that much because your pathway is kind of almost similar. Obviously if you don't if as a woman if you don't have what do you call this? If you don't fall pregnant in high school, for example, then your path is kind of similar. But then after 13 and after high school, that's when things, or in high school and you go into varsity or the later stages in your life, that's when things really change. And then the
Yeah.
changes are so drastic that then it influences the choices we make. And I think then by the time we get to a point where we're like, fully grown adults working, looking for families, our thought processes are absolutely different. And then the one group doesn't understand the other, and the other one doesn't understand the other, and then we don't want to understand each other. But the problem is that then we're affected by that. So as much as a
Yeah.
guy, I can say, "Ah, you know what, I don't care about this. I don't care about what women think and what they want about this." It's like, yeah, until you do, because you can't live alone.
True.
So yeah, so you find out about this when you then have a partner, or you have a girlfriend, or you have a wife, where you think, you know what, perhaps, I don't need to win every conversation. I don't have to argue about every single thing. And then she also does the same thing where she goes, oh, you know
Mm.
what, perhaps I should not always be thinking about myself. Perhaps it should not always be about me being pampered and things like that. But again, like I said, you can only really learn that once you either understand it from listening to stuff like this, or
Yeah.
you go
Once you
through it.
get to a certain
But
point in your life. Actually, a friend of mine mentioned something to me. So he was saying something that his grandmother taught him when he was young was that as both genders, we must never marry people that are almost same as our age. Hence, in the olden days, we find out that people had maybe a 10-year gap plus. But now the argument we're both having was that even him, he doesn't want to be in a relationship with anyone that he's 4 years older than, because he feel like there's always conflicts and too much gap. And even with me, I'm like, I have tried to date males that are maybe 5 years older than me, and it has not worked quite well. But for males who are almost my age, 2 year gap, 3 year gap, it has worked perfectly. So it seems to be like we're doing it differently from our parents, that what worked for them no longer works for us. And I think for me, when I was thinking about it, was an issue of back then with our parents, there was never this thing of, oh, we want to go and budget jumping together, or we want to go and sit with our friends and play 30 seconds together, or we want to go on a date or whatever. Those things were never a consideration when they were getting married. It was about building a family and all of that. But for us, I want someone who's going to fit into my friendships, meaning that you if my friends are people who listen to jazz and debate about certain kinds of notes and all of that, I would want someone who's like that. If my friends are into playing 30 seconds and all those critical thinking games, I would want someone like that. So having a age difference would then hinder some of that, because I look at my friends currently, very chilled people. We can be childish in our own moments. We can be serious in our own moments, depending what the vibe is. Now, I imagine myself dating someone who's 8 years older than me, and that's whenever we do these things, whenever we become crazy, um, I'm like, how do I fit in an 8-year-old plus person into this scenario? Like it doesn't work out. Uh, and so in that regard, we mostly now look at dating, or some of us have started looking at dating and even extending into say, just like how our families have always looked at dating as a family thing, we now regard our friends as our family. So I also look at, can you fit in this own family of mine? Besides of what the family would have regarded back then, being responsible and all of that, but also to say, if we decide to travel to Vegas today and do what people in Vegas do, drink ourselves out. Can you fit in that? Or I'm gonna have a 35-year-old who's screaming into my head or how irresponsible I am as a person. So in that regard, the large the difference now cannot be that huge, because we need to be relatable to each other. And I think that's one of the tricks now that we have in our age group when it comes to dating, because it really can't be how our parents were doing it, because we date for different reasons now. We marry for different reasons. I look at young Makotis and how they still wear shorts, they still wear jeans, and all of these things, and their partners are cool with that. They're like, I love you like this, babe. Like this is how we met each other. But I can imagine myself with it almost, because I'm close to my 30s now. So if I'm dating someone who's 10 years older than me, someone close to their 40s, I can imagine a 40-year-old telling me I should wear a long dress and da da da, and all that conflict. So as just like the issue now, we need to really work around the biological clock to work for each other, because we date each other.
yeah,
Because we don't want to date someone who's 8 years older than us, who's more matured. I want to date my age group, and my age group does not want to date someone who's 5 years younger than them in the male side. So it means they will end up dating me. Then how do we work around the maturity side of things?
yeah. I think that's actually where the whole thing of girls mature faster than guys comes in, because we don't have to do it, and you guys are kind of forced. But anyway, I had a talk about this with Mishka and the Ports, I think, quite extensively about this whole age range and dating and all of that. I don't want to get too deep into it as well, but just to kind of, it's like, yeah, for a female, it's a bit more beneficial to date a guy that's a bit older than you than it is to date a guy that's younger. Because again, as we mentioned before, the whole thing of you need someone that's going to take care of the next person. So you need someone to take care of the offspring. So back in the day, when women didn't work, then the guy that works is generally going to be the guy that's going to take care of the family. So it makes sense. So therefore, you're attracted to them instead of someone your same age as you, is going through the same struggles as you. Why would you want to do that? So at least if he got you pregnant, then you're stuck with a 20-year-old as a 20-year-old, and then you have to give your kids away or your kid away to your parents. If you date someone older, he's more likely to then be working and all sorts of things like that, and then he can take care of you. So the opposite is then true the other way as well, or majority of it is true the other way, is that if you're an older guy, you don't want to date a girl that's going to be, or a woman that's going to be older as well, because chances are, or older than you, because chances are if they get past that age of 35, 38, and you want the family, they won't be able to give you a family, right? So you'll just be able to date them. So you always want to get someone that's going to be a bit younger than you, right? Because then at least someone that's younger can always give you a family if you need one. So they kind of, those things kind of then both kind of click together. It's okay, well, as an older guy, you date younger girls or a younger woman, because then at least you can get a family out of them. So guys then typically want to date someone that's going to be slightly younger, not too young as well, but
Yeah,
slightly
I was
younger.
about to say that because a friend of mine, just on December, we were having a conversation, and he was like, I think he's 32 this year, and for him was like, I think he was like, I can't date anyone 27 and younger because there's certain maturity I want from a person, and that maturity, as much as we want to believe otherwise, it comes with age. It comes with certain experiences that you get to have, and so
And
for him
also,
was
yeah, and
so
also on top
what.
of that, it's like if you're dating a 27-year-old in this lifetime, in this social structure, she wants to also experience life and work and do all sorts of stuff. So therefore, if you're gonna have a child with her, then who's gonna be taking care of the child? Because you, as the father, want to then go and work for your family. So if you date a 27-year-old, she's also at the peak of her age group and her career and all sorts of stuff. So it's gonna be difficult. So you need to always balance out those ages. So you want someone that's going to be slightly close to you, but not too far, but also not too old, right? So you want them younger, and also that for a male, there's the certain factor of, well, also there's that social challenge that you want to then always be the top of the, or you want to be the head of the household, right? Or you want to be the head of your friends even. It's just that
Mm,
the
that ego.
macho-ness, yeah, that you
But
want,
but
yeah.
you but you see the challenge now, you don't want someone who's older than you, but you don't want someone who's very younger than you. So you left with, if you're a 32-year-old, you're left with a 28 and a 29 to 30-year-old. That's where your margin is. But
Yeah.
in that age, for me as a female, if I were to put myself in the shoes of a typical female, or what is expected in the modern day, I'm at that time where I need to settle, where I need to get my ducks in the row in terms of husband, kids, and everything. And when I a 32-year-old who's like, I'm still building my career, um, I'm still just trying to have fun with my boys, or like mostly like now we have friends in both genders. Like I want to go out with my friends, like and have that life. And hence I'm saying that I always look at my friends because my friends are almost in that age group, between 20, 28, 29, 30, 32. That's our age group. And I look at stuff that we get up to, as I'm saying that for me to have a 38-year-old person that's like, can you fit out in this life? Even for my own life, I still want to I don't even think for myself that I'll be ready to be fully fledged, like what you're saying. for me, I haven't got into my 30s. I'm still like 3 years before, and I'm just thinking, you want me to be a wife and look after your kids, and like this is a time where I'm building my career, I'm partying hard, I'm traveling. This is before everything else for me. So the next 3 years are very important for me to just explore the world, explore myself in everything. So anything that says, okay, have kids and everything, it's like, okay, when I get to 31, I'm like, okay, sure, cool. Um,
Yeah.
let's now talk about that. But for you at that time, if we're to be dating and you're 32 now, and I'm approaching my 28, it's like you already on your 36, and life was different altogether. So there's really like uh, a point where we really need to have those conversations as partners, and as to also assess where we are in terms of our lives and what we're thinking, because so much is different for different people in terms of perspective. For a different 27-year-old, they're trying to get married. I mean, I have friends who got married at 25. I was not even thinking of looking at, even thinking about it. And I'm still at my age, I'm still like, guys, give me two more years, I'm cool. So it's really just that at our age now is different from our parents, where at a certain prime age, almost all females wanted the same thing, to get married. Now, there's like the topic said, sexual liberation, and I think it should go with self-determination. There's so much self-determination of what we want. I might be a career woman, so I still want to hit my 35 without having a kid. There's a 25-year-old who wants to do it both, be a career woman and have kids. So there's so much that is happening based on the different perspective we have in life, and also based on how we're viewing life as people and how we want to lead our lives. And the same way, there are 32-year-old males who want to be settled down, have a family, and want to figure out their career while they're already married. But there's a 36-year-old who's still like, you know what? I love my single life and I still can continue. So there's so much variety, there's so much preferences at her age. And I feel like that's what makes dating and marriage so difficult for us, because different from our parents when it was a one size fits all. Now you just have to first check in with the other person, like, where are you in terms of your
Mm.
thinking?
Yeah, I think there's two things there. The first one is that, again, going back to what we said in the first live, is the fact that if you're a female and you're 32, you can explore and do all sorts of stuff. But then you get that again. You get that point where,
Mm.
okay, now you're 35. Now what do you want to do? Oh, I still want to go and explore and do. Okay, cool. Now you're 37. What are you gonna do now? Then it's, oh, I want a baby. Or I want to have a family. Okay, well, what's your pool like? Right? What's your
Mm.
dating pool like? Because now, what range of guys you're gonna get? Then the pool of guys gets smaller and smaller, right? If you're still going to be wanting like a high-end guy in terms of whatever you think it is, the best of the best. It's like, nope, those guys are taken now in that age group of yours. So what do you want? Then you start to then adjust the things that you like. Then you say, ah, you know what, fine, I'll do this or I'll settle this. Because once you go past that 38, that 39, where you're no longer able to have kids, then you won't be able to find a guy that's going to start a family with you. And that's the problem, right? That the woman faced then is like, okay, you don't want kids, well, you better be sure, because then if you're gonna be with someone else that wants kids, he's going to leave you when he needs to have kids. Because he needs to go and be someone that he can start a family with, because he wants his own kids, right? So
Which is a conversation I really think we also need to really have, especially as a black people. The whole conversation around kids, as to why are we having kids? Um,
yeah. So
and is it
I
something
was gonna
that
say that.
we feel it's inevitable to have, or is it something that we really want to have? Because the reason why I'm asking this, Like I said last time, there's a statistics that says it was I think it was an auditor general from Stats who was saying this, that about 63% of men are saying I'm married, but 38% of women are saying marriage. So statistics don't match. And I think most women get to that point because they get married but end up raising kids alone.
Yeah.
Um,
So,
Males are present but absent at the very same time. So you're here but you're not here.
mm,
So and I think that's where we need to question the most, as to, from different perspective of genders, why are we having kids? If you're a male, why are you having kids? If I'm a female, like, why am I having kids? And also, there's a concept we really don't want to discuss. Again, my perspective will always be about Black people because I'm Black. That's the struggle I know. Is that we don't want to discuss a point of not everyone is meant to be a parent. Everyone can be a father, but not everyone can be a dad. And those are two different people. It's one thing to be a father, it's a whole different other aspect to be a dad. And the same thing is everyone can be a mother and give birth to a child, but not everyone can be a mom. And that's two different things again. And we watch kids being damaged along the way simply because we're making those choices. I'll get married and I'll have kids because we feel it's inevitable. And that's the conversation we really need to have as a people, as to why are we having kids? Is it something that we can put up to? And what does it look like for us when we're parents? Because most of us, or I could say some of us, were raised in responsibility or out of responsibility, but not out of love. Yes, we are responsible adults, but very broken and unable to love because we're never loved, even in our childhood. And these are some of the results of a society, I could say, from my perspective, where people are having kids but not understanding why they're having kids and what does it mean to have kids beyond financial provision.
yeah. Yeah. Um, yeah, that's a lot again. So many, every time you say something, I go into 1,000 thoughts. Um, Let me just, yeah, so like I was saying earlier, I'm gonna get into that quickly. But like I was saying that uh, for a woman, again, when you get into your 30s, 38s, your pool gets smaller, and therefore you have to then truncate also your choices, and then you kind of have to, okay, I'll do this with this person, because even if you go and date the Ben 10 or a younger person, he's gonna get to an age where he's gonna want to start a family, and then he's gonna leave you.
Mm.
So you don't have your choices are always kind of like that's why the Chinese called them the leftover generation, because you're not really sure what's going to happen. Whereas with guys, like you said in your friendship group, if I'm a 32-year-old guy and I say I want to start a family, but I'm not quite sure. Let me see what I'm 37. Then I get to 37 and I go, still not quite sure.
I
You know
said,
what? I'm not gonna, go down on this whole pressure thing. Yes, the women around my age might have gone down, right? The ones that I can choose from, or the high end women. But I know that then there are women that are still there that might have thought like me and said, look, listen, I also don't want kids, so that I can date them. Or there's a lot of women that I can still date that are younger, that are gonna be 32, that are gonna be 33. So anytime when I'm 35, I mean 37, 40, 45, and I want to start a family, I can always go back into that dating pool in the 34, 35s, because those women are also looking for older men. See? So then I can start a family there. So that's why then for guys, it's a totally different mindset and a totally different attitude when it comes to that life. Because then I can say, look, I want to work flat out and be the CEO of this company. I need 15 years to do that. Okay, I'm 30. I'll do that for the next 15 years and not worry about ever marrying or ever having kids. Then I get to the top of the food chain. Now I'm the CEO. I can say, cool, I want to start a family. Boom, I go back and I date a 35-year-old or 36-year-old that's going to start a family. I know she's matured. I know that she's gone through whatever she's gone through in life. And I know that now I've got someone, right?
mm,
Which is why we end up at the top all the time. We end up at the top with jobs. Whereas females, it's like, what do you want the career? Because you're going to have to sacrifice 10, 15 years. So how are you going to do that if you want the family? So the women that get to the top are the ones that sacrifice the family or are superwomen, where they have the child, but then they still can't be there because you have to then compete with the guys that are going to say, look, I am going to work 15 years flat out and I'll be at the top. And it's as simple
But
as that. So this whole change with so this whole difference of pay gaps, for example, between genders has nothing to do with the fact that you're a male, I'm female. It's like, no, it's our circumstances. If you want to go and you want to compete, cool, and sacrifice family just like I did. But the issue is that I can sacrifice family and still come back and have it. Whereas you can sacrifice family, then you have to say, well, what, you're going to have a surrogate? Well, then that's another route. Okay, so the next thing I wanted to get at was that what you were talking about now with this whole how life has changed with our families back then when they used to get married. It's like when they were younger, right? They had the option of, look, if someone gets you pregnant, we're either going to shame you as a community, right? And you can't abort, you can't have what is it, the injection, you can't have all these sexual, what do you call this? I forgot the word now, but to prolong birth. Yeah, contraceptive, sorry, yeah. So to prolong birth, so therefore to marry is the best thing because the marriage is for the child. So when you're a woman and you get married, then you have to kind of connect to someone. As life has gone by, guys have said, no, look, it's not our responsibility. It's like, look, we don't have the consequences of childbirth. You are the female. You then protect yourself to make sure that you don't give birth because we don't have, now as time has gone by, we don't have to be there. And females don't have to be there either as a choice. But physically, you then choose to then say, actually, no, I'm going to actually have this child. So the guys say, cool, if you had the same option, you wouldn't be there either. And that's what some of the guys choose. And they say, no, I'm not going to do that. If you don't want to abort, cool, that's going to be your prerogative. So therefore, then marriage has been kind of taken off the table, which is why then in the younger day or the olden days, when the option was, look, this is where it gets to the sexual liberation part, is look, you have sex, you then know that a baby will come. So therefore, do not have sex if you're not married. And that's the only thing that I would agree with something in the Bible or any religious book is don't have sex until you're married, because if you do, right, and you have sex before you're married, you don't have the contract to tell the other person that they should be there or that they can be there. But if you have sex out of wedlock, chances are you will be a single parent. And that's what happens. That's why people that's why you have things like ilanuga, lobola, and all these things was to do it when you're connected. Now the sexual liberation part says, no, look, let's have sex all the time and let's hope that the other person can be there, should be there. It's like, cool. The guy said, cool, we don't have to pay that much for sex now. Perfect. We'll have it. We'll have it with you. That's cool on us. But the consequences are not on us. And that's where you end up with those stats of, okay, well then,
but then at the
yeah.
same time, but then at the same time, for a woman, it's a catch-22 type of situation. You can be married and still single. That's the
Yes,
reality for
but yes,
exactly.
but the probability is not even close.
No, actually, like I was saying, there are present absent fathers. That's the common concept where
Yes.
the father is there physically, but you still carrying the job of the two parents. So they even call it babysitting. Oh, I'm babysitting my kid. There's no such thing as you
Look,
babysitting your kid. You can't babysit
look,
your kid and someone else's kid. So
fair enough. But
there's
marriage
kind
keeps
of
him there. So marriage keeps him there. So he's not
no,
absent.
it
So
doesn't.
marriage, look, of course he does, because he's bound to a contract. If he leaves, you take everything.
No, that's the
That's the
thing.
whole.
So what I'm saying, Lou,
It's the same with the female. The female's bound to the contract, right? So the marriage contract is for the baby. So the female's bound to the contract. So either one of you, even if you want to play around, you can just take the custody of the child. You can take custody of the child. You can take half of whatever he has. Half of whatever he has, depending on what the contract is. But marriage then says we actually have to be together. We have to find out a way for this to work, which is why it was done like that. If you don't even have the contract to begin with, then you've got nothing to fall back on.
I get where you're coming from, Lou, but the reality is, as much as there's a contract that is binding us as a two people, Reality for black women on the ground is quite contrary to that, in the extent
Look,
that yes, we are married, yes, we are bound by this, but the responsibility of raising the kids still lies solely on the woman, to an extent that some women feel that as it was better if I was doing this alone, because when I look at a black woman who's not
they
married, can I
they say that. They say that. But then it's then the option is then divorce him. Then they say, no, actually, you know what? Nah, rather
but that's
not.
the
There's all
thing.
the stick with it.
If you look in the back in the days, if there was a kind of a taboo thing, to an extent that when they were coming of age, there were women who were married in the 70s and in early 80s who began taking their husband to court for maintenance while living in the house, because the person is living in the house, but the woman is providing for food for the kids, for the family, and everything else. So they're not different from a woman like me who had their kid outside of the wedlock and knew from the onset that I'm on my own on this. So it's very much possible in South Africa that you can be married and still be single. So yes, you
Yes.
married in court, but in terms of raising kids, in terms of, of taking responsibility of the house, is still dependent on you. Your husband goes out every weekend with Amachita. He's only at home Monday to Thursday when he has to be at work. But Friday, Saturday to Sunday, you're on your own. You're the one who's have to wake up in the morning and prepare for the kids while he's watching news. But he still
Yeah.
wants you to do a lunchbox for him, iron for him. So there's no, you're not being held out, because different from our mothers could do all of that because they were not working. So it was
Mhm.
kind of, I am tender. Me being at home, it's a full time job. Me looking after these kids, it's my full time job. But right now, young women that are married, they're doing the job of taking care of their kids. They're still going to work in making sure that there's food in this house. As a result, some of them are opting to go to court and apply for maintenance while they're sleeping next to their husband.
Okay, so granted, that's true. That's a very small minority. Okay, so
No,
again, look,
it's
no,
not.
look, compared to, okay, let's leave the stats for now. Let's just leave the
Okay.
stats for now, right? If you're married, so you're a woman, you choose to marry someone, right? You're choosing to marry that someone because you have to have certain vows, and you know that that marriage is bound within the fact that this person now cannot leave you. So at least even if you have a child, right? Even if you have a child, he's going to be there. So it's the same for both of you. The woman can leave and the guy can leave, right? Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so that's both your choices, right? Because you have certain instances where the mother says, "Look, I'm going to take care of the child out, and let me give it
The
to the
grandparents.
parents." So it happens,
Mm,
but they're both there and they're bound by something. It's like a job. You can resign. People resign every single day, but there's contracts, right? And those
mm.
contracts at least say that, well, if you want to then
Give that
part
notice.
ways, you know that there's a cost and you have to pay that cost. Therefore, you are much more a higher probability to not have people resign. People will then make sure that they live out their contracts, right? For example, right?
But you know
Whereas
what?
with
What's the point of me being married if I'm still gonna carry the burden of most of
yes,
what I've done
so
on my own?
so look, so now the question is now what is a better solution than actually to be married? To not be married, then you're gonna land up with the majority that have nothing. So what's
For
the
me
better
personally,
solution?
if I were to choose, I'll choose not to be married, because there's nothing as exhausting as, the thing is, I'm gonna make an example about a household. If at home we're three girls or three siblings, there's an expectation that Lou is gonna do the dishes, me is gonna clean this. Like there's that expectation. But it's so exhausting when you find out that only one sibling is carrying those chores because the others can't pull the weight.
So what do
So
they do? What do you have to do?
so in that extent, obviously you don't have much of a choice because you're siblings. But in the
Mhm.
extent of being
You're
saying
not bound to
I was
anything.
saying I was
Yeah.
married, you
So you
understand?
assign responsibilities, right? You assign
Yes,
responsibility.
but that's the
Yes,
thing. Even
fine.
if you find responsibilities, people still don't put through their weight so
Yes,
that
yes, fair enough.
taking their responsibility. Hence, I'm
Yes.
saying for me, it's better to be alone and knowing that I'm not reliable, I'm not relying to anyone. So if A is not moved, it's dependent on me. If the fees are not paid, that is on me. If this child has not eaten or has gone to school without proper uniform, that is dependent on me. Than to have someone in the house and expect them that at least they'll pull their part and still not pull their part. Because when we're living together as adults, I'm not about to give responsibilities to you. You old enough
Yeah.
to know and ask, okay, we have a kid together. What type of school we want to take the kid to? What are the fees? How much you contributing? How much am I contributing? Who's doing the lunch boxes? Who's doing the ironing? That can't be me micromanaging the house and saying, oh Lou, when you are doing the lunches, I'm not doing this. No, I'm not living with two kids. I'm living with one kid and one adult. So that's the
And
thing about having a husband is that you're expecting this person to be an adult and to think for themselves and not pull through to your weight to be another child, which is what has happened most of the time in the past that we've had our parents saying, oh, when you're getting married, knowing that you're getting a second child. And most of us as female, we just refuse to get the second child and say, you know what? I'm gonna do this on my own.
look, I'm not going to speak for guys. I'm not going to speak for girls either. I'm just trying to look through the whole situation. This you see, this is the thing as well is that you look. I don't. For me, it's like whether you decide have to live alone or whether you decide to get married and live with someone. They're both bad. You trying to find out what's less bad. That's you don't have a good you don't have a good choice, right?
Mm, mm,
Anything
mm.
can happen either way, right?
That's a good
So
point,
that's
actually.
that's the issue. So you have to, yeah. So that's the this is what the argument that we're having about now is like, well, marriage is not great. It's like, no, I'm not saying it's great, but you have a better probability there than you have than if you're alone. Because at the same time, also the thing is, the marriage is not for both of you; it's for the child. So you want to raise a child in a household with two parents, right? And at least then, if you raise a child with a household with two parents, the alternative is raising the child alone. So if you raise a child alone, you have to go out to work. Who raises the child? The community, the other kids, his
Mm,
friends. He then turns out to be more likely to be a gangster. He's more likely to do crazy stuff. When he gets to 13, who's going to regulate that child? The guy's not there. Are you going to regulate him? Having a child alone is a two-time full-time job. So
true.
you want to be so then the narrative on the other side is, look, I want to be a strong, independent parent. It's like, yeah, really? Okay, well, how are you going to be strong if you're going to be at home?
It,
I mean, if you're
I
going to
do
be, so
personally.
just wait, let me finish. Yeah. Because
Oh,
then
sorry.
you have to go to work. You have to go to work, right? And again, like I said, if you want to be earning enough to get the child through a lot of things, good schools and all these things that you're paying for at school with what do you call this, extracurriculum activities and parties and friends with situations where he's out there with Jonathan and all of that. It's like, okay, cool. You're gonna have to have a high end job. To have a high end job, you're gonna then have to work long hours. So then you don't have time to be there with the child. And then you say, okay, well, at least I'm there alone and I'm not giving. I don't have this other person that's going to be a burden. It's like he may be a burden to you, but is he going to be a burden to the child? Because that child is going to grow up without parents, regardless, right? So
Mm.
you want him to rather have two or one, and it's like, well, you have to make that choice a personal decision because you need to find out what's going on. Like, what are you going to do? That's your choice. And then when you make that choice, you only have like the marriage can be bad,
Con-
and this is
Consequence.
definitely going to be bad. Yeah, there's consequences to either.
Look, Lou,
Yeah.
I don't think there's any woman who wakes up and decides, you know what, I'm gonna have this kid alone.
So that's the
I
thing. That's the
sorry.
thing. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying is that the whole liberation thing is then the whole, okay, I want to have sex as much as I want to, and I want to have as much unprotected sex as whatever. Back in the day, they realized that, look, having that, right, is very detrimental to the kid. As much as you want to have, as much as you want to have, it's detrimental to the kid. So even if you don't like the person that you're with, at least give him a nuclear family. We can work on the strength of that family and all that, but The child at least will have some sort of whatever, right? Which is what the Bible and all those books say, right? Which is why I say it's like the one thing that I'm like, actually makes
Okay,
sense. And then
but
men,
but
yeah,
but
and
my
then men
point
said, and then men said, then the man said, look, if I want to have a baby, I mean, I have to sacrifice. I can't just do all of this. No, let me marry her. Or if I get her pregnant, I have to marry her. Then the liberated part said, women said, no, I don't want to be bound to someone that I that I I don't want to be bound by someone just because I had sex with them to have a baby. I mean, to have a baby and be married. I want to be single and independent. It's like, okay, well, then look at that, how that happens. Oh, then the outcry is, oh my gosh, now we are single parents. Oh my gosh, now the guys are leaving us. It's like, exactly. Of course
I
it's going to
I
happen.
disagree with the narrative, Lou, in this extent that it it goes back, or rather uses the same narrative that society have used all the time, shifting the blame to females when males are not pulling through on their part. The reality is, no woman wakes up and say, okay, I'm not gonna involve the father. Actually, just a week or two ago, we're having this conversation on Facebook on how mothers are actually shielding black fathers who are deadbeat and making excuse for them so that they don't seem bad in their kids. On the narrative that no, the kids will see when they're old and all of that. Because what happens is males decide not to pull through, whether they're in marriage or not. That's that's something they can do because there are women who, while married, they still have to take through the weight of I have to drop the kids at school. If I'm not at home, if I have a meeting that ends at 7 p.m., I get home, the kids have not eaten, but the husband is there. And that's something that women go through a lot. It's not just
Yeah,
a
but
minority, it's a reality
okay.
in a society where
So then
women,
choose better men.
there's no better man. There
Well, look, the
isn't.
people that are, look,
All of us
look,
dated the men
look,
we dated
look,
and got
no,
married to
look.
thinking they're better men.
Look, that's look. So this is the issue that the issue that you're having is had by the issue of the people that have chosen the wrong men. The
No.
girls that are with the look, the guys that are, the women that are with the right men, right, and the men that are with the right woman, they don't have this problem. They don't have the problem of people leaving
And
their
the
kids.
percentage of the right man and the right woman, that's actually the
Okay,
minority. The percentage of right women and right men marrying each other, that's actually a minority in our country. Majority of people would then say they are married to wrong man and wrong woman. Because half the time, that's what happens. You have young males your age who still believes that it's the responsibility of a woman to cook, to clean the house, to take care of the kids. And it's not just a minority, there's still a majority of them who think that way. And those are the men we're gonna marry because there's no other men
okay, and who are
out
they
there.
raised by? Who are they raised by? Purely from your stats that you're saying that there's a lot of single men, right?
I
I mean,
won't be
there's a lot of single women. So these men that you're crying about are raised by who? In that stat, in
yes,
your
Mel
they're
didn't
raised
pull
by women. Are they raised by women?
yes.
So you raise them to not do what you said they should be doing.
And it was not supposed to be our responsibility alone to raise them to be correct.
No. I'm not
And
saying it's supposed
that's
to
where
be
the
your
problem
responsibility.
that's where the
I'm not
problem
saying it's
is.
your responsibility alone. No, I'm not saying it's your responsibility alone, right? I'm saying
But also
now
you're
that you
insinuating that we did
no,
wrong.
no, I'm not saying that. All I'm
No, you
asking, right, is that
insinuate that.
okay?
Your question insinuate that because we raised them, it's our fault that they're where they are.
No. Look, so I'm not insinuating that, right? All I'm asking actually is so judging by what you're saying, so you're disagreeing with what I'm saying, right? So now I'm going back,
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to understand from your point of view that you still have guys, or you have guys that don't do what their wives are supposed to be doing, or what they're supposed to be doing with their wives or with their girlfriends, right?
Mm,
And those guys are raised by what? Single mothers, right?
true.
The dads are there. I mean, the dads aren't there. So we can already discount them. They've done wrong. They're terrible, right?
Mm,
Cool. So now you have the mothers raising the kids, right?
mm-hmm.
and the kids grow up to not be the fathers that, or they don't grow up to be the males that other females want.
Mm.
Right? So you're still gonna blame those guys only for that.
It's the fault of both parents, but it can't solely be the problem of the woman. Just because the reason why I'm saying your question insinuates that women are on the wrong is because the same
I'm
question
not
has been raised.
insinuating that they're wrong. I just said to you that the men are on the wrong. I've already told you that.
I understand that, but the reason why I'm saying your question insinuate that, or it's problematic on its own, is because the same question has been raised when women cry about about males who are abusive. The question is, who raised this man? Just
Well, that's
because,
another
so
topic.
the
We
point
can get
is,
into that.
you raise them, and it means you raise them wrong if they still if they're abusive towards men. That's what society
No,
say.
I'm not saying
That is
that.
why I'm saying that question, that line of question, it's problematic because it, on its own, deep inside of it, when you look at its nuances, it insinuates that because women raise these boys, they're supposed to have been correct.
No. So then you see the argument that we're having. The
Mm.
solution to that, right, of the highest probability is to not have sex out of wedlock. To
But
not have kids out of wedlock. Don't you can't say it doesn't solve the problem. It decreases the problem insanely. No problem
it
gets solved.
the reason why I'll say it doesn't solve the problem is because, okay, let's take the generation before 1980. The generation before 1980, going backwards, marriage was the norm. Don't have sex before marriage. We have a large number of deadbeat fathers born in the 70s and going upward. We have a large of them who are abusive towards their wives, but they were raised in a two family. We have a large amount of them who are sexually assaultive towards kids, towards women, but they were raised in those families. Simply because just having a structure as of a marriage does not decrease these problems unless you have two intentional people who want to raise kids correctly. Because, like I'm saying, I could have a husband and still be only responsible for raising those kids. Because me having him does not guarantee him pulling through the weight for his part. But if we have a discussion that we want to have kids and this is how we want to raise our kids, then marriage becomes a solution because each
So look,
partner will be held accountable for their part.
so you mixed a lot of stuff there. You started to mix violence as well, which yeah, it's very different. It's got a different trajectory altogether. But going
But
back to that,
okay, the reason why I mixed
yeah,
it in the mix, I was trying to show you that regardless of whether kids are raised inside of marriage or outside of marriage, for us in our society, because we marry for the wrong reasons, because we
no,
marry for the kids, we do it wrongly. Marriage should never be about the kids. Kids should be a secondary citizen. The reason why many marriages are broken is because once there's a kid, we forget that we've ever loved each other and focus on these kids.
no. When I say married for the kids, I mean for the fact that marriage is not about both of you. To be married is to basically say that we're trying to be here for the next person, which is the child. It's better for the children.
But marriage
Because
shouldn't be
otherwise,
about that.
look, if
It
you
doesn't mean
date,
because
if
we're
you
married,
date,
we should have kids.
no, I never, look, I'm saying marriage is the best form of connection between two other people for the
True.
child, right? If you guys love each other, you don't have to get married. You don't even have to have kids. Then you can just be together and see each other whenever you want to see each other, live together, right? But
Mm.
if you want to have a child, marriage is the best thing for that child because that's when marriage looks at that child as the primary person out of there, right? Which is why then when you are married, you are less likely to be a single parent, male or
No,
female.
no.
You're less likely than if you're not married.
It's actually in South African reality, more women who are married are single parents. That's why I'm saying that the problem is not the marriage. Your narrative of it's better for the child, it's good and it makes sense. But in terms of us, we have not yet understood what marriage should be and should look like. So we marry for the wrong reason. I'm 28, I should be married. I have a car and a house. The next best thing is to have a wife or a husband. We our idea of getting married is not coming from a right place. It's not coming from the point where you having when you're saying it's better for the child. For us, it's better for the child when I'm already pregnant, and then we're like, oh, okay, it's better for the child that
No,
we get married.
no. If you want to have kids, if you want to have kids, then marriage is better for the children. Marriage is not a good thing for a guy. For example, if you're a male, it's not a good thing for you to be married.
I'm not disagreeing with you, Lou. I'm saying actually
Yes, so that's what.
your
Yes,
idea
so
marriage should be good for a kid is the proper one. But for us in our reality now, marrying for the child and having it as a good thing, it comes secondary. It's a thing of, oh, you got me pregnant? Let's get married. It's good for the child. But if we don't have a child before we get married, when we get married, we're just marrying for each other. But we get distracted once the child is involved because we never planned marriage with a child. As much as we knew inevitably that there's going to be a child, but in our minds, we never knew how that looked like for us and how that would affect us as a couple and how would we navigate that. As a result, the men will most likely feel neglected because the mother has put all their love towards the child, while the men still wants their love because they pull through a less weight towards the child in terms of their love. It's imbalance. But if we both parents were pulling through their love towards the child and able to pull through love, whatever is left towards each other, then there's a balance. Hence, the couples that work out, you find out that both parents pull through their love towards the child, and whatever that is left or whatever that they've already built, then pulls back to them. But if there's an imbalance of me giving too much love to the kids and making sure they're taken care of, and there's you who chips in when it's suitable for you, then there's imbalance. As a result, you feel that I've neglected you, that I don't have sex with you when you want to because I'm tired, that I don't do the things I used to do for you and be sexy for you because half the time I'm tired. Because we're pulling through weights that are different. There's not a balance. Hence, I'm saying that your idea of marriage for kids is proper and is ideal, but we have not yet understood it in that way in the South
we
African
have
society.
understood it. We have understood it before until we became sexually liberated. That's what I'm trying to
No,
get at. Is that
no.
sex comes at a cost, right?
Mm-mm.
The elders understood that. Indian people still understand that, right? Other cultures understand that sex comes at a cost, and that cost is a child. If you want to
Because
have sex, you gotta,
because that comes at the oppression of a woman. The reason why in those cultures it still works is because women are still submissive towards their husband. It's still because
no,
women are still no. Look at India.
no.
Look at Muslim communities.
They work together.
They work together. Women are not oppressive
Yep.
in those countries.
No household.
Women are oppressive in any other way in those countries.
Yeah.
You can't go
How?
in simple words forms of you most likely to find the woman when they get married. For them, that's the end of them enjoying their lives as a person.
You don't
All
have to
their
get
lives.
married. You're not oppressed, huh? How are you oppressed
Huh?
though? How are they oppressed?
Okay, this is what I'm trying to explain to you when I'm saying the system, even back in the day when it comes to South Africa, it was the system have always been oppressive towards women. In this extent, if
How?
I'm the only one who's gonna sacrifice my career and my well-being, while at the end of the other bargain, you have it differently. The system is oppressive. The system didn't work out when women started being liberated when it comes to sex. The opposite of that being For the longest time, they've never enjoyed sex. For the longest time, sex was not about them enjoying it. For the longest time, they couldn't explore what sex meant for them. And now that they can have sex with whoever they want and whenever they want to, the balance in society have changed. In those communities where you're saying that it's still working out, it's because hierarchically, women they cannot have sex with anyone they want. They have sex with their husband and it ends there. But the husband can have sex with whoever they want to have it. So the imbalance is still there. So yes, women are oppressed in the extent that in those countries they can't have sex with you and who and who and who and who
Why
because
not?
they're keeping the society in check. But the men can have sex with whoever they can. But now, different from South Africa, in a country where women can have sex with whoever they want, the imbalance is
It's,
different.
it's
Now,
the
the
same
hierarchy,
everywhere. It's the same everywhere. I know this for a fact. It's the same everywhere. Women and men can have sex with whoever they want, whenever they want.
no, not in musical communities, unless one abandons the culture.
Like who? No way. Like what is then? What is the like? I don't understand. Like if you're a woman, let's say you're a Muslim woman and there's a Muslim man, right? And you guys get married.
Mhm.
Right? What stops either of you from cheating?
Of course, you're gonna be killed in Muslim communities if you cheat as a woman. You're gonna be punished for that. But for a male, you're not gonna be punished for that.
Where is this? Where
Afghanistan,
is that?
Israel, and many other Muslim countries, where you're still closed off as a woman, where you cannot show your face, but the man can.
Yo, look. Okay, so look. It's very tricky, but look. So I can understand where you're trying to get to, right? I understand that there's certain there's certain places where certain things are not good for certain societies and are not good for other societies. And then to say that they're oppressive to certain societies, it can be a debate because it's like, well, I can then say, well, look, if you don't want to be there, then you can move, and the society is not oppressive to you. Because
Hmm.
also in that space, you can say the same thing and say, look, well, marriage is an oppressive to males, right? Because then as soon as a male gets into marriage, right, and then wants to leave the marriage, for example, then he has to
Hmm.
then sacrifice what he has, right? And the child goes to the mother, right?
Hmm.
But it's like, well, then don't get into the marriage to begin with to then say that that system is oppressive, right? So in certain societies, you do have certain situations where males are oppressed and females are oppressed in particular ways. And sometimes it'll be in one particular thing that you can choose. And then in another time, in that same particular thing, a guy can be oppressed. So when you say
Granted.
that, yeah, so when you say that females are oppressed, and we're talking about marriage now, right? So in terms of marriage, when you say that females are oppressed, it's like, in what way? In which society? In South Africa, anyone can cheat. In England, anyone can cheat.
Because
In America,
because
anyone can have sex
now
with anyone.
because now we're sexually liberated people. Back in the 80s, cheating as a woman was an abomination.
Cheating was an abomination. It still is.
But we're sexually liberated beings now. We can do it. I can't be married and even if your family decides to come at me, I can get off at them. I can pack my bags and
Yeah,
go
it's not.
because
Yeah, it's
also
not.
I
It's
have the
not.
money to do
You can't
that.
question that. It's a choice that you have, but you have a consequence with any choice.
No, but back in the day, our parents didn't have the choice. Our
But
fathers
what
were
would
known
happen
to
if they
have
didn't do it?
our fathers were known to have mistresses, and it was a known fact. But my mother could have never had a side guy unless she wants to be
Of course,
killed.
there's a lot of women. There's a lot of women back in the day that had kids with other people and not the guys that they married.
And what was
Or
the
any
reason of that?
marriage even. It still
What
happens
was the
now.
reason of that? In most likely cases, that the guy was infertile, and families will
No,
arrange that a woman must go and sleep with another man and come back home and pretend that the child is of that man. So
okay, look,
still, it was oppressive in that
we
nature
got.
because he might not want to go and sleep with another man, but because you as a man, you are infertile and it's something that cannot be discussed in the family. I'm then asked to go and sleep with another brother of yours and come back home and pretend that you made me pregnant.
See, now we're talking about isolated incidences that are different.
No, we're
Like,
not.
of
No, we're
course we are.
not.
Like, we can
to
nitpick
know.
and say, look, there's times where guys then feel as though that because the wife was not able to give birth, he then went out and had sex somewhere else. So therefore, he was not actually let go by this by the by the what do you call it now? By the system, because he didn't actually really want to do that. So he was oppressed by that nature. It's like we can go on forever with that then and
Maybe
talk
maybe
about
this
the
there is
nitty gritty. So
maybe this
what
of
I'm
how
saying is,
many women had side niggas and how many men had had mistresses. The reason why I'm saying that it was more probable for a male, whether the wife was infertile or not, to have a mistress. Hence, even polygamy was a thing.
okay, you can't
Our
even.
fathers
No, no,
would
no, no,
leave,
no. Polygamy is
come
totally
to
different.
Joburg. Im,
Polygamy is totally different.
our fathers would leave our homes, come to Joburg, create a whole another family while my grandmother is waiting at home. And my grandmother wouldn't dare even think of looking at another man. And that will
She can
happen.
leave.
No! How is she gonna live
What?
if who's gonna raise the kids? With what money? Because she was dependent
Exactly.
on
So then
herself.
why? So how is it then oppressive? How's that oppressive?
Because the system on its own was oppressive in the extent that
Who made
women were
that
not
system?
working, males were the ones who
Who
were
made
working.
that system?
Males had a power over women. It was an economic power that even if I wanted to live as a woman, I still cannot. While when on your own, you can still continue and cheat and do all you want, while everyone
Look,
knows,
look,
and I cannot do the same thing.
look. It's an economic. So what is the? It's an economic system power now. Is
It's,
that an
an,
economic inequality between genders?
it's
Like, don't
the
have the
inequality.
kids.
The inequality was not only economical; it was also social in terms of the laws. Like I'm saying, it was an abomination for a woman to cheat. So obviously, if you don't want to be a society outcast, if you don't want to be an outcast in your own family as a female, you're definitely not gonna cheat. But no man is gonna be an outcast if they cheat. No one is gonna be an outcast for coming with 10 kids. Isn't that an oppressive system that dictates that as a female I cannot cheat because I've become an outcast, but as a male you can do that and still become part of the society? If I have more than 5 guys, I'm called Isfeb. If you have more than 5 girls, you're called a player. Mine is
Yeah.
decotory and yours is appraising.
What? You could be called a hoe. Like,
Yes, being called a whore as a female is a derogatory word. It's an
yeah,
insult. Being called a
yeah.
whore as a male, it's a you did well, you're doing right. And that
So,
is always how our society has structured itself. You're
I
a
don't want to
player.
get.
You can have all the girls. I'm a female having guys. I'm a
So then
whore.
what?
I'm gonna
So
lose
what
my
is?
value.
So wait. So what? So what is oppressive then? Which system is it that's oppressive?
The whole system, how it treats the two genders, the
So
fact
it's
that
a.
you can, the fact that I can be insulted, but you can be praised for it.
So which one? The sexual system.
No,
Which
Lud,
system?
the society standard as a whole, it
So
treats the
society.
different genders. The society as a whole, in terms of its standards, are oppressive to one gender. Hence, I'm saying when women
Okay.
started
So look. So
saying
look.
as I'm
Okay. So
saying, when
the
women started saying, I can have sex with whatever I want, and I don't care whether you insult me or not, then the society was disturbed because it can no longer hold us in shame. Our mothers were shameful being called a whore. I don't care if you call me a whore. So the balance in
okay.
society has been disturbed and society had been distracted because we can no longer abide by the rules that it had that were oppressive to women because they could not have what men could have.
Okay. So the societal system is oppressive to female.
Yes, it has always been. The work pay,
Okay.
how everything is economically, socially, and otherwise. The most oppressed person in the world is a black woman, not only socially, in terms of race, in terms of class, in terms of gender. They're oppressed in all fronts. But it's different for males. Black male are oppressed in terms of class and race. For us, even gender is an issue. The fact that I'm born female is already an oppressive thing in my society, or for me. To just being born woman, it's like, Oh Lord, for in my next life, I'm not be born male because being born male comes with a privilege.
Okay. All right.
I'll make
So,
an
okay.
example. I'll make an
I'll,
example. If we're both from the same house, you're allowed to come at 10. I cannot come at 10 at home because
yeah, if
I'm
I
feeling
come at, yeah, yeah. So, okay. Even with that, it's like I'm allowed to come at 10, but I'm more likely to die. That's when crime happens. So, is that
no,
really a positive?
no. Let's leave the time where crime is more evident. Let's go back
Yeah,
in
but
the day.
look, this is what
Let's
I'm
go back
saying.
where we
So,
all
it's,
Talavan. Let's go
so
pre.
you can't change. Look, when we, you can't change. It's like this is what generally happens, right? It's like, well, if you when you're having a conversation about privilege and oppression, right? It becomes
Mhm.
this thing of who's more oppressed, and it becomes a league of oppression or an Olympics of
No,
oppression. I'm
playing
more,
Olympics more oppressed.
what?
We're not playing Olympics of who's more oppressed.
Okay, let me explain to you how. Okay, so what happens is then if you then see yourself as being oppressed on a certain wavelength, right? And someone
Mm-hmm.
else will say, okay, well, let's pick gender on a certain criteria, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're oppressed on gender because back in the day, um, females were not did not have their own sexual choices. Let's say arbitrary.
Mm-hmm.
And then the males will say, okay, well, as a male, I was forced to go to war. I didn't want to go to war. That's an oppression. Why'd you take the
Mm-hmm.
females to war? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, but then what happens is, flip, now we both oppressed. Now what do we do then? Okay, well then a person that is black will say, hey, you know what, back in the day, look, I wasn't allowed to vote, right?
Mm.
Then a white person in Scandinavia will say, look, I wasn't allowed to vote either. Or a German Nazi will say, I wasn't allowed to vote either. Or German,
Mm-hmm.
not a Nazi. But a German will say, I wasn't allowed to vote either. It's like, flip. Okay, well, now on the grounds of gender and race, we're now both oppressed,
Mm.
right? So we can go through this whole oppression thing, and then you'll say that a black female is more oppressed, and then I'll say, well, a black female, yes, a Kailicha is more oppressed than a black female, yes, at Johannesburg, and then we can say, okay, well, a black female from Johannesburg that's disabled is more oppressed than a black female that's from a Kailicha that at least has a job. So even in, it depends on on what category we want to then define this oppression. But what happens is as soon as you can find a category of oppression that fits with you and you're like, yo, that's the one, then you will continually want to drive that, right? And I'm not saying you're not oppressed, but what I'm saying is that everyone is oppressed in certain levels and everyone is privileged on certain levels on a certain level of analysis, right? So
And
again,
like,
it's like you saying you cannot say as a black person that you cannot say a black woman is the most oppressed person in the world. It's like some black women are, some black women aren't. It's like there's a Thai woman there's a Thai woman that has nothing. There's a Thai guy that has nothing and he's working in the woods. You're more privileged than he is by even having a phone or having a job. So it's like you can't then take a whole group of people and say that this whole group is oppressed. It's like, not really, because those
nobody.
groups are individual.
Okay, okay. I'm not trying
So
to
those,
reduce your argument into material, but for and I still stand with my argument. A black woman is the most oppressed person, regardless of their class.
okay, so okay, most oppressed woman compared to what? Or compared to who?
To the rest of the people in the world. When I speak
Okay,
on
so
a black
as
on
long
a
as you're
black
black and you're a woman, you're more oppressed.
in many fronts, yes.
Okay, what in the front in the other fronts the not so many fronts, what are you then?
You're still oppressed, but in a different level. So can I finish my argument?
Yeah, go for it, go for it.
What I'm saying is the black woman is the most oppressed woman, or rather oppressed person in the world, because regardless of their class, there's certain things that we have in common in our oppression. If you read the book Never's Condition, the book profiles different kind of women in their different spheres. but there are commonalities in their oppression when it comes to sex, when it comes to
So
their
wait,
say,
so the female
marital,
part that you're
the
oppressed with,
woman, sorry,
what is it that you're oppressed with? The fact that you're black or the fact that you're female?
both. They
Both.
go
Okay, what
concurrently
about okay? And then the ages?
in terms of age.
Yeah.
Well, if we're in the same age, it's more likely the same, but if we're in a different age, it's a whole different conversation
Okay,
altogether.
so then so then who's oppressed? So if you're black and you're female, right? Because obviously you're not part of just two groups as a person. You're part of many groups. Like
I
one person is
understand,
part of a lot of people.
but there are distinct things that make you a person. And race, gender, and class makes up most of what you are as a person. Which class do you fall
No.
out? No. Which class do you fall into? Which
You
race you
you
fall? It's yes, age is there in most of the time, but
not
in
all the
half the
time.
time,
You can't get rid of
okay,
it.
then age is always there, but there's more likely that you'll be discriminated based on your age, but it's more likely that you'll be discriminated based on your gender or your
It's not
your
about
race or your
I'm not
class.
talking about yeah, I'm not talking about whether you're most likely to or because again, even with that, it's like you it depends what we're talking about. Right? If we're going for a job, for example, right, you're gonna be more likely to be discriminated against by your actual CV than anything else, by your achievements.
But
So
we
it
split it
depends
down
what
into,
you're talking about.
but what we're talking about is when it comes to sexual liberation and what it means for a black person, and it's particularly a black woman. Hence the statement. Because at the end of the day, what I'm saying is whether you're a woman who's earning a 10 billion job, actually, some of the women in our society are disrespected if they're not married while they're having the highest job paying because they couldn't keep a man. So in terms of class, and as a black woman, there are certain things that you cannot evade, regardless of how well accomplished you be. The issue of being an object when it comes to sex in society remains a thing.
That's no
Something that,
different to
oh,
any woman and no different to any man.
sorry,
That's no different to any woman.
I can't argue for white women. Unfortunately, I don't know how their
Well, I'm
world
telling
looks
you,
like
it looks the
because
same as women.
because it's the same argument that we're having, or rather has been there when it comes to feminist movement. White women and white and black women cannot have the same struggle and cannot have the same movement concurrently running because our oppressions and our own experiences are different. Hence, I always say for me, generalize on what I cannot generalize and say all women experience the same. I'm gonna say black women are oppressed in this way because I cannot speak for a race I don't know. Because white women have experienced life differently. In the workplace, a white woman will still get paid more than me while we have the same qualification simply because race is
No,
an issue.
no, that's not
Oh
true.
my word, it happens all the time. It happens between males. Your male counterpart who's white will get more paid than you because he's
No,
white and you're black.
no.
And which world do you live in where that doesn't happen?
I live here. I've lived through this. I'm living through it. It's not
Okay,
true.
that is true. There are black people in the workplace who train white people, and white people become their supervisors while they train them. That is our reality. And because he's now a
No,
supervisor who earn more
no,
than you,
no.
but you have more qualification and you may have more experience, but your color of your skin says differently.
So why do you sign the contract?
Yeah?
Why do you
Because you
sign
need
the
a
contract?
job. Because you need a
So
job.
yeah, so then don't sign the contract then.
And then I must not feed my family
No,
simply because I'm
look,
retiring against a system that is going to find someone else that they can hire.
look. So that's a very common argument as well. That's actually not even true. But um, that's the first part that I never understand about it. And it's a good thing that you brought it up. I was having a conversation about with this about Tupi with Tupi. I have it all the time. But the first point of anything, right? Whenever you go to a workplace or anything like that, like a contract of marriage, if you don't want it, don't sign it. If you don't like it, don't sign it, right? And it doesn't matter whether you want it or not. If you, I mean, whether you are forced to sign it or not, right? If you don't want, if you go there and you see the contract and it doesn't go towards whatever you want, don't sign it. The people that don't sign it, right, either get another better contract or they don't get another better contract. But they don't get that contract. Okay?
So
So if you don't want it,
you challenge a system that is oppressive simply by not signing a contract or running away from it. Reality is in a
look,
country where unemployment is
it's not happening. This is
30%
the
plus
thing, you see.
job that comes through. But it
See,
doesn't
this is
mean I'm
what
not
I'm saying to you. This is what I'm saying to you is that the arguments again will go from trying to make it more singular and singular and singular to the point where you go, where one will say, "Yo, well, I was at a job and because I was a female, I was less." It's like, no, don't sign the contract that you do not want.
and
Okay,
what must I do? How do I pay my bills? How do I take my
no,
kids to
no,
school?
no. Well, that's why then you get that contract because you signed it. So don't blame the system.
No, the system is
If you
wrong.
don't,
It's
look,
wrong that it
look,
treats a black person different from a white person. The
it's
person,
got nothing to do with.
the issue here is a system that is oppressive to black people. Not that I need a job. Yes, I'm gonna take a job, but us saying that I must take a job simply because I'm challenging its unethical
Okay,
conduct, it doesn't mean I'm on the wrong.
okay. Look, so look. So what is it? Is it a racial pay gap or is it a gender pay gap?
Sorry?
What is it? Is it a racial pay gap or is it a gender pay gap? It changes all the time.
If you're female, it's more likely, and if you're female and black, it's more likely to be both. If you're male and black, it's most likely to be on race.
Okay, okay. Look, so if you have a company where it's all males, right,
Mm-hmm.
right, and as you say, you have five males and you have five females, right? Okay, you will call it a gender pay gap, right? If all the males are paid the same and more than the females, right?
I'll
That'll be
have
a
to look
gender
at
pay gap.
I have to look at the race of the woman. Unless all the women, when you say all the
No, we're not talking
women,
about race now, because I'm just saying males. That's why I didn't bring up race. So I'm saying if
no,
you have five
no,
males,
can't leave the issue of race because the whole woman could be black
okay,
woman.
okay. So it's
It all
five. Okay, so it's five black males then. Five black males, five black females, right? And all the males are paid the same and more than all the women that are paid the same.
then it's a gender issue. But if you
It is
have
a
white,
gender racial pay gap.
but then
Okay.
if it's white males in the mix,
No,
then
no,
you
I'm not
have
talking. Look, look. I'm just talking about black males and
then
black
it's a gender
females.
it's a gender gap
Then it's a
because you
gender
only
gap.
have
So
black
then
people
race.
competing with another black person.
Okay, so now if you have the same job, right, with five white males and five white females, right, and all the males are paid the same, right,
Hmm.
and more than the females and are paid the same, then what's it then?
It's a gender gap.
Okay, good. Right. So now, if you have five males and five
Hmm.
females, and all the males are paid the same, right? But more,
Hmm.
oh, sorry, all the males are paid more than the women, right?
Hmm.
But not the same. What do you call that?
Emma, you've lost me. All the males are paid the same.
No, not the males are not paid the same. They're paid more than the females,
Okay.
right?
And then
But they're paid more than the females, but right? They're not paid the same.
it's a race issue if part of this other side they're doing the same job. Okay, let's
No,
say
so they're the
on
same. They're the same color. They're the same color. They're all the same color.
and they're not paid the same.
Yes. The males aren't paid the same, but they're paid more than the females. It's still gender?
On which side? Are you asking for the males or the females?
Well, for the company.
Okay, Lou, let me get you correct. You're saying the males are black and the
Yes.
women
And the
are black.
females are black. Yes.
Good. and
Yeah.
males are paid more than the women.
Yes.
It's a
But
gender gap.
differently. No, but differently. So they all play differently. The males, they're not paid the same.
The males are all paid differently.
Yes. But it's still more than the females.
Well, then you will have to categorize it based on looking first on the males. What's the reason why they paid differently?
Okay, so then if they're paid differently because one of them is a bit more educated, or the other one
Mhm.
is a bit more educated, the other one has more experience, the other one has less experience, everything that actually has to do with the job, they're paid
Then
differently
there's
because of that.
okay, Lou, let me explain this. The gender gap issue happens if me and you have the same qualification, have the same experience, but you happen to be paid more and I'm paid
Okay,
less.
now, yes, okay, look, so exactly that, right? So now that's what I wanted to make everything the same, first of all, right? Now the thing
Hmm.
is now is that if we're now paid differently and all of these things are the same, right? Why sign the contract if you feel like you're not paid the same?
Then your struggle is different in that case.
Well, we
And I've
both get
never
this. Well, both
and
you get a contract, I get a contract, right?
mhm, mhm,
And our qualifications are all the same. We're both black.
mm,
We're
mm,
both the same gender. Both the same gender. We're both black. Everything's the same, right? But in
mm.
your contract, it says less than mine, right?
But
I
that's what I'm
signed.
saying. That the struggle now is different. It's a question of why you're being paid differently because it's not a gender issue. It's not a race issue. It's
Yes,
not a
it
class
becomes a.
issue.
Yes, then it becomes what? What issue is it then?
It's that there's unfair discrimination, a blanket
Why
unfair
would it be?
discrimination. Because it can't be that you paid more than me when we have the same qualification, the same experience.
Okay, yeah. Why? So look, at a job, when you go to any job, right? They give you a specific offer from based on whatever they
Mm,
want, right?
mm,
Okay. So they give another person a specific offer based on whatever they can give, right?
mm.
So how's that discrimination if you actually
No,
then
if
sign for it?
if your job description matches my job description and your qualification matches my qualification and your experience matches my experience and we still play differently, that is unfair discrimination.
Okay,
Because it
okay, what
can't
if
be
what
that
if
I'm gonna,
what if
it
what
can't be
if
that
what if
I'm
you
gonna,
hired what if you hired during different times?
well, that plays a different factor.
So there's so many other factors there to then only just say that there's a gender pay gap or racial pay gap. Work
No,
doesn't work
no,
like that.
no, you misunderstand this. The gender gap and the race gap is raised when two of us are employed by the company where we have the same experience in number of years, the same qualification in terms of qualification, but we do the same exact job. But based on you being a white person and me being a black person and you being male and being me female, you still get paid more than I am.
Okay, so
The
so
question
that'll
is,
mean
why am I being paid differently when we do the same job with the same qualification and the same experience?
okay, so that'll mean that every single thing will have to be exactly the same besides gender.
Hmm?
That will
In
mean
order for us to be
everything
what?
in order for it to be only a gender pay gap.
It has to be that we on the same part
Every
and on
it will have to mean everything will be exactly the same besides gender for it only to be a gender pay gap. Because you can be black, female, you take another black female, right, from a different place, right?
mm,
So now you're both black and you're both female. You can come
mm,
from, and you're both same qualifications, but you come from America and someone else comes from Tibet, wherever, right? A random country,
mm,
but yeah. Then you
mm.
go and you go to the same country. So you come from different places, and their offer to you is different.
It's unfair discrimination. Yes, we might be both females. It doesn't mean I'm not gonna complain just because we're both females. It's still unfair discrimination. It's just that we're not competing on gender now. It's
Yeah.
way
So then,
beyond gender. It's way beyond
what?
race. It's way beyond class.
So what's it about then? What you, what it's about. What if it's a guy? Let's say not two. So two, a black guy and a white. So exact same thing, exact same scenario, right? We just only
Mm.
change the gender, and it's a black guy from Tibet and a white lady or white. I mean, a black woman from America. They go to the same job, same qualifications. What's it then?
It's a male and a female.
Yeah, then it's gender.
Yes, gender plays an issue.
So it's only gender then.
Because Lou, it's about time, about power dynamic in a society that had
But
always
that's what I'm saying.
determined place people based on their gender, based on their class, based on their race, on their ethnicity. You come to South Africa, I could get the same job as you, and the one thing that they discriminate me for is the fact that I'm Xhosa and Zulu. It's still a discrimination.
Okay,
There's
fair
something.
enough. So then it's not a gender pay gap.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. For every scenario, it's different. But there
Yes,
are
so
distinct
you get
scenarios
gender
where
pay gaps, you get ethnic pay gaps, you get cultural pay gaps, you get um, racial pay gaps, you get qualification pay gaps, age pay gaps, you get what do you call it? Experience pay gaps, you get language pay gaps.
experience can be a discriminatory factor.
Of
If you
course you
have
can.
if you have 3 years, I have 2 years, then it's not a discrimination if you paid more than me.
Well, why can race then be? Everything is going to be discriminatory, obviously, then. Because you
No,
can be 60.
no,
Look,
because
no, look,
because in terms
you
of the
can be
law,
60. You can be 60. You can be 60
you're
in the
looking at
same
this
job.
in a narrow situation. You're looking at this in a narrow situation. In terms of the law, there is positive and there is negative discrimination. So me being paid less than you because you have 3 years experience and I have 2 years experience, that is positive discrimination. Of course, we're not the same. But if you have 3 years experience and I have 3 years experience and we're still being discriminated, that's negative discrimination. So it depends on which side it falls to. There is positive discrimination, there is negative discrimination. And it's determined by the context of the situation. It's not a blanket approach.
And on whose side you're looking at it from.
When you're
You
doing
can be
that,
60. You can be 60 at a job and you're going to go, you can be 60 and you're going to retire the following year. And I can be 20 with the exact same everything and they'll pay me more. What is that?
it's a positive discrimination towards your age. You are about to exit
Toward
the
me.
company, towards the person who's older than you.
So if
When you look at
I'm
it, you're looking at it both sides. Because the unfair and fair discrimination has to be looked at on the both side. You're not being biased in your matter and looking at it one person and not looking at it the other. Hence, I'm saying when they're looking at a situation where you have 2 years experience and I have 3 years experience, it's a positive experience it's a positive discrimination for both of us because we're not on the same level. No one is being treated unfairly. But if you as a male, you have a 3 years experience and I have a 3 years experience, but I'm paid less, then it's negative for me. While it's positive for you because the whole discrimination favors you as a person.
yeah, that doesn't favor you.
And that's unfair with me.
Yeah, exactly.
That's why it's going to be challenged that why are you unfairly discriminating me? But it's never going to be challenged when it's positive discrimination where both of us, I have 2 years, you have 3 years. So of course you need to earn more than me because of your experience. No one is going to challenge that because your experience determines so. But the moment that differences is about race, it's about color. Sorry, it's about race, it's about gender, it's about class, it's about background and socioeconomic status. Then it's a whole different conversation. It's no longer positive discrimination, but rather negative. You looked at me and you felt that I deserve less when I shouldn't be.
Determined by
Why,
what?
Lou? I need to go. I need to prepare for tomorrow.
Okay. I made an example about this quickly with the thing is also what, like I said to you before, these things they're you can't separate them. You as a person are a grouped person. If you're working in the medical field, for example, and you're female, and you, because you're female, can get more people into the job, right? Or I mean, more patients in, then the company will look to then employ more females, right? Because the
Mm.
females will be part of the benefit to the company, and because of that, they will then pay you more, right? So because you're a female and because you are able to then bring in more work, you get paid more, and that's going to be different to a male. But that doesn't mean that it's negative towards me. That's just how the business goes, right? So
No,
so now,
no. Gender gap issues does not only apply when it's females.
I'm not saying that it's
Discrimination
that it.
doesn't only happen when it's females. It happens on both
I'm not.
sides.
I'm
You
not
can be
saying.
male, you can be male and I'm female and you get into a company like that where they discriminate on you based on your gender because for some reason you can't bring more clients for whatever, but you qualified as me and you do the same job as me and you should be paid for what you should be earning. And it doesn't mean it's
Yeah,
right because it's done to you and you're male, and it's wrong when it's done to me and I'm female.
yeah. So what are you saying? So if I'm a male, right, and we do have exactly the same thing, but the job requires a female, is that discriminatory?
No, what I'm saying is, in some, so let's say you get to your company, ne?
Yeah.
And when they hired you, there was never a specification that there should be a female, ne? But when you get there, you find yourself being paid less into the job simply because you are male. Then it's
No, but how would you
discriminatory.
know? How would you know? It's simply because of that. There's so
Okay,
many
it's
other
difficult.
factors that it can be.
Okay, it's difficult for males to point it out, but it's not difficult for us females to point it out. Again, that's because
Look,
of a double standard system that we live in, which is also wrong.
look,
That
the
it's
males
easier.
aren't paid the same either. There's different things for different people. So it's not like the males are all paid the same. There's females that are paid more. If you come to the job more often and work longer hours, you'll be paid more than what you're supposed to be paid.
Of course, as I said in the
Yeah,
beginning, the gender gap issue is looked at when everything is the same between the two of you, but you're still
which is
treated
never.
different. That's what happens. If we both have to do a 9 to 5 job and do these 10 tasks, and we both fulfill those 10 tasks according to what is required, and you're still paid more than me, then it's a discrimination. Because I do
Look,
the same job as you do the same job as me, we have the same qualification, the same experience and everything else, but you still paid more. However,
what is
if
this?
your
This
tasks
is
have two extra things than me, then it's a different issue because we're not doing the same job.
okay. I think this is difficult to also debate because, like I said, it's like this footballers and the basketball players thing. It's like you the basketball players say, yeah, we also play basketball. But the female basketball players will say we also play basketball, and the male basketball players will say we also play basketball, but the men are paid the same. It's like, no, yeah, you might be playing basketball, but you're not doing the same thing. You're not even close to the same
How?
level. How are you
How?
even look? First of all,
You
first
can
of
be
all,
male.
first of all,
Blue, I need to go. I need to prepare for
all
work
right,
tomorrow.
all right, no, good. We'll finish this off. All right.
But anyway, the last time, what I wanted to highlight, just to leave
Mm-hmm.
it as a tip off and something that we could discuss again. Remember, we're discussing the issue around that with sexual liberation, uh, women would be opting not to have kids and different other things. And the more we raise girls like that, the society balance will be different. And you were saying no. And I wanted to highlight that at one point, when the Chinese had the one child policy, they had it, it was all good and nice. After 2015, they decided that people now can have two children, but people are still opting to have a one child because once you teach something over time, people, even when they're given a different scenario when they can do something, they still want to stick with what is economically, socially viable for them. So for
Mm-hmm.
women to be sexually liberated is something that is viable because they get to determine what happens into their bodies when it happens. So if you having me teaching that to my daughter, obviously her encounters with males will be different from how I encountered males at the beginning because it was an imbalanced one because I didn't know better, but she knows differently. And if she teaches the same thing to her kids, she's more likely to choose whether I want to have kids or not and not be pressured into a society that says because you're a woman you're supposed to have kids. Hence I was
True. That's what
referencing
the
with
birth
China to
control is.
say that
That's what the
hence I was
birth control
referencing with
is.
China and saying that with them having the one child policy, even when they were allowing people to have more than one child, people stick to the rule because they saw that it worked better.
Yeah. Well, not work better, that it worked for them. But because again, it's like it's the individual's responsible. It's an individual's choices and depends what you benefit from. But then it depends also what benefits in society because you don't live alone. So it's like again,
Yeah.
like the birth control pill, right? It's
So
like
what happened?
that's
So
exactly
what
what it
happened?
did. And the question is now is like, well, are women just men then?
Okay.
Because I don't
So
know.
it's the same thing what happened with China. Hence, it's a good example. At one point, it was good for society to have one kid. But now, the collective of individual, now you're saying it's an individual choice. But when it becomes a collective of us, it becomes a society choice. If out of 100 people, 60 are deciding to choose one child, it means a whole entire over 50% of society has chosen that. So it changes the spectrum and the context of society. So yes, I could individually choose today not to have a child. And then someone else in Bloemfontein who's a female does the same. And someone else in Cape Town. Then it becomes a chain of people who then become society because of the large number. And that disturbs the order of society because now more women are being sexually liberated. More women are choosing not to have kids. More women are choosing to prioritize their careers over everything, which is again at one point it was an individual choice, but if that individual choice become a choice for many other people, it became a societal choice, which what happened in China, where more people are opting, yes, individually, but if you look at it in a spectrum, it becomes a society of people who are saying we want one child, even though we are given a choice of having two, which then disturbs the economical and social order of society.
Yeah, we'll
So I
get
was
into
coming to
that.
your point that our individual choices become detrimental in society. If every one of us in our different corners make those choices, they become a societal choice which changes the social order.
Yeah, we can get into that as well. There's a lot of talking points on that. Yeah, that can be the start for the next topic. There's a lot of talking points in that because as much as again it's a societal choice. It's like there's that big choice with nature. It's like what are we gonna do then? Yeah,
And the
because
Chinese have and the Chinese have always been against nature. They just made their own sun. So they're always a good example in society.
yeah, well that and then I mean look and they nearly got taken out by COVID as well. So that's also the issue. So yeah, it's things like that. Nature always kind of says, "Huh, okay, well, you want to live in a little box,
Stagnate.
then how about yeah, maybe living in a little box and then your little room is nice and it's cozy because then you don't know what's going on until someone gets sick in that box. Now all of you are sick. Then all of a sudden you don't want to live in the box. You want to open it up and you want to go live somewhere else. Then it's like, nope, you want to live in that box. So when disease or war comes, you all get annihilated. You see, so that's a topic.
Of
You see?
course, the one child policy as or even us as females choosing more and more not to have kids is detrimental to society in the extent that there will be no younger people to take over us. That I
Yeah, and then
understand.
you become, that's what I'm saying, then you become like Italy. When a disease comes and every one generation gets wiped out, and then you're done
True,
for.
I understand. But
Yeah,
I
and when there's a
guess it has
war.
but then I guess it has come to a point where females have decided to be selfish like males, choosing themselves over like don't care what society thinks and what it becomes. For now, I'm all about me.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's then it becomes a situation where it's like, well, the females more like males. or are females males then? But then it's like, well, what's going to happen then? Because those females won't reproduce and more of their genes won't be reproduced. But the guys that want families will then reproduce with the females that want families. And then those families will then reproduce and those genes will then become more and more. So as much as the policy had then binded you, right, that you can't now reproduce, it might have limited the amount of people that should be reproducing, but now because it's open, the guys say, man, I've been wanting kids, and then they reproduce with the small amount of women that there are, but then make a lot of kids. And then the women that have been sexually liberated and never wanted to have kids will then also then kind of die off. So, yeah.
But that's what I'm saying. But that's what my point is, that the more we have these teachings, yes, for the next 10 years or so, we might still have women who have more than 30 kids. But
And that's all it
compare
takes.
if you
You
compare
only
from
need
back,
one guy.
eh?
You only need one male. That's the thing.
No, no, I
That's the issue.
understand what you're saying. But when you
Yeah.
contrast with now and 1994, more women were prone into having more than 3 kids. But if you
Yeah.
contrast now, more women are more comfortable in having 1 kid. And
But back
that is exactly what we're telling our kids. Even if guys were to have kids with different people, it will never catch up to a time where women were prioritizing having kids. And that's the detriment to society.
back in those days, there was more war, there was more diseases that you could die from as well. So having more children made more sense because at least there will be a specific number of people around. Because if you're going to let all the guys go to war, most guys can die off, which is why you kept the females at home because at least if you had one guy that survived, he can repopulate the whole of society. Whereas if you take the females and go to war, as much as you might say that it makes sense because we're all equal, it's like not for society, because if you have one female, you can only then repopulate every 9 months. See? So back then you had that issue. But then now it's like, well, we're not really in war. We're kind of living lavishly. So you can afford to do that. You can afford to only have one child because there's a lot of men.
No. Okay. I'm really going, but we cannot afford that because for production in society, for people to work, we need. That's why China is going back to two-child policy because their workforce is old. They need younger people to work, but there are no younger people. So yes, we might not be going to war, but we need a workforce that is young. But if people are only producing one child and others opting not to, then it's still a detriment because there'll be no one to work.
True. We'll go to that. There's another topic to that as well, which will add on to that. Because at the end of the day, also it's like, it doesn't matter the amount of people that you have at work, the work is still the same. So you can have 10 people there. It doesn't mean that you need all 10 people to work the same. Two people will do the work of 10 people. So there's another factor there that you have to take into account. You would know this when you're at work. It's like you can have a company with 10 people, but actually three of them do all the work, and then the seven are just there doing nothing. So that's another issue.
Bye.
I'll
Great
see you.
conversation.
Sure. Cheers.